Hello YouTube, it is I, Random Robin, and today we are continuing with Lost Girl. So if anyone watched the previous video, you know this is a visual novel about the bunny girl Serena going through college trying to become a novelist, and she meets Leila here in the library. That's basically what happened. So let's just go ahead and get back into it, huh? And hope everyone's doing okay today, and staying healthy and safe. And yeah, let's go ahead and get back into this. Time for my not so good reading. I'm late again. Oh, that's right. Serena ran through her morning routine as if someone had placed an open flame under her feet. She had forgotten, with her mind so much filled with other things, set an alarm to wake her up in enough time to get to the library upon opening. Apparently her entire weekend was going to be spent on forgotten things, her own everyday forgetfulness included. Sorry with all the moving around and such, trying to get myself all adjusted here. I seem to be having some technical difficulties, if it were. She wanted to spend as much time as possible there, not only for the sake of planning out her novel, but she also had neglected to study for her classes the day before and figured she'd work on that while she was there. She wondered if Leila would be a good study partner, though she assumed that Fox, a fellow reader, would be much better at helping the other pan out her novel. Felix, you have to wake me up next time. The fox simply stared at her with blank eyes once more, which she read as, and you shouldn't rely on others to wake you up. Which, that she couldn't deny. Why was Felix always so painfully right? She honestly didn't know why she was rushing so much. She didn't really have anything pressing to get her today. She herself was setting her own timetable on getting to the library to study both for novel ideas and for the class studies. But the more time she had there, the more she felt she could accomplish. So running a brush through her hair and grabbing her bag, she bolted out the door. I hope she's there today. She really didn't like the idea of being surrounded by complete strangers or being in a dimly lit basement all alone. Even a place full of books was intimidating if there was no one you knew around. Even if that person was just someone to fill the void of space that kept you from feeling like you were truly alone. When Serena walked into the library, she noticed that it was practically the same as yesterday. Even though this was a small suburban town with mostly college students, she found that the library was packed with people. Of course, she didn't recognize any faces, so she couldn't tell if these were the same people. Except the librarian, who looked up from behind the front desk to scowl at her before her eyes returned to the top of her desk. She's probably running through a checklist of ways to murder me. Yeah, librarian sounds like a, something. Serena mumbled with a wary chuckle to herself. She obviously didn't think the librarian would hurt her at all, but she did have a scowl that made Serena uneasy. Like she was walking on broken eggshells, and she didn't even know the librarian's name. She must have made a very bad first impression. Trying to think about it, Serena made her way to the stairs. She made her way down gracefully this time, well, about as gracefully as she could when she was in a hurry to get to the bottom. She managed to get down with them without falling down, screaming, or crying. Progress, she thought. Leila, you down here? Serena asked as she cautiously made her way to the back room of forgotten books, peering over bookshelves. As soon as she made it to the back room, she held a hand to her heart and let out a deep sigh of relief. There, in the exact same place as she left her yesterday, was Leila. Morning, sleepyhead. At this, Serena rolled her eyes. She didn't need yet another person to remind her she overslept through the first. Though the first one was a plush toy who never actually said any words aloud. Not that she would ever tell Leila or anyone that. Part of me thought you might not show up. Well, why wouldn't I? I've been coming here for a long time. In fact, it would probably take a miracle to keep me away from this place. As Serena sat down on the carpeted, dusty floor, I sat down beside her. Serena noticed that Leila had another book half opened in her hand. This book had black binding and worn silver letters dancing down the spine. She couldn't read the title, but she felt she didn't. But she didn't feel like she needed to. Whatever Leila was reading was her own business. She was honestly just grateful she was here at all. So, I have a question for you. Leila looked up from her book and her eyes narrowed cautiously as Serena began to unpack her bag. She pulled out the worn pages of Starless Magician, her writing notebook, and even her study materials and laid them all beside her. She settled on putting her notebook in her lap first and tapped a pencil to her lips and thought. And what's that? What do you think makes a good novel? Leila leaned her head back against the bookshelf and closed her eyes, apparently lost in thought. Serena wondered what she was thinking about exactly. For the few minutes the fox had her eyes closed and dragged on like hours as the bunny girl waited for a response. But after a few moments, Leila opened her eyes again, looking up toward the concrete ceiling. What makes a good novel to me is the heart that went into it. I don't particularly care what it's about, what genre it is, whether it's sold or not, whether the author is a good person or a bad person. What I do care about is how much of one's soul I can find within the pages. Because the more soul they put into their work, the more gripping it is. The more real. I like that. I like that thought. Serena was completely taken aback by the other's words. She was amazed at how much care the other had placed in each word, and how she had never thought of it like that before. So this is the kind of stuff Leila thinks about, she thought. About souls and hearts and putting one's true self on the page. Leila was more than she appeared, Serena pondered. So if someone just put their soul into it, their heart, then you consider it good? I consider it worthy of being read. Which is about as good as you can get with books. Yeah. I see. Thanks. Serena wrote that down in her notebook, wondering just what her soul would want her to write. It's not like she had anyone to ask. Her family never understood literature, and Leila surely didn't know her enough to know what someone of her caliber would be able to write. Once again, she began to ponder where she should begin. If it's from your heart, then I'm sure anything you write will be good. But you can't do anything until you start. And Leila was right again. How could she start a novel if she never started writing? Perhaps the simple solution was simply write and see if what she wrote had any substance. And perhaps the story would work itself out from there. Can I ask you another question? Well, it's more of a request. Sure, anything. Will you read what I write once it's done? Tell me what you think? Leila looked astonished that the other, as shy as she was, would ask such a thing to her, a fox she barely knew. Yeah, that's definitely that's a big, sudden thing to do, but But perhaps Leila had underestimated Serena. Of course. But why me? Serena looked down at her notebook, setting her pen to paper as she began to rack her brain for ideas. I don't have any friends here. My family, well, they aren't exactly the scholarly type. Her family grew up poor and couldn't afford much schooling. She was the only one in her family she could recall that had any interest in reading or writing. Her family all had hobbies of their own, though, hobbies she herself couldn't quite grasp. But they couldn't grasp hers either. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up bad memories or anything. No. There's nothing like that. I'm just being honest, though. When I say it out loud, it does sound rather lonely. The bunny frowned as she stared at her notebook, unable to conjure up a sentence for the moment. She had family back home, but she had no one here. She was chasing her dreams, but was it really okay to chase her dreams all alone? Would it make her happy? Serena didn't know. If it makes it feel any better, I'm all alone too. I don't have any friends, or even any siblings for that matter. My parents are almost never home, so I've pretty much grown up by myself. Serena looked over at the other with watery eyes. She couldn't believe the other had gone through something so lonely, so painful. She wanted to reach out and give the other a hug, though she thought that might be inappropriate with how little they knew each other. I'm sorry, that must be awful. Leila shrugged like it was no big deal, but Serena could see the pain in her eyes when she talked about it. She couldn't even begin to know what it was like to have parents that you were never home, that never waited up for you, that never missed you. It's not all bad. I can basically do whatever I want. Though I suppose that's not always a good thing. Too much of a good thing was too much of a good thing. That's fact. Don't listen to those AM and PM commercials, like too much good stuff. It's not good to have too much good stuff. Believe me. Honestly, when let's say a day is going way too well and I'm just nothing bad's happened yet, it causes fear in me. Cuz I'm like, no, this is too good. Something bad's going to hit me hard. Anyway, doing whatever you wanted all the time would be fun, but it would also make being unable to do things extremely difficult, and it could also make you do rash things for the sake of your own greed. Though she believed Leila wouldn't be the type to do anything bad, Not that Serena really knew her that much at all, though. But to have no one to spend all those adventures with, that seems sad. And it did hit Leila then, like a meteor striking the earth. She seemed to be shining so brightly, but then her face fell all at once. Serena expected her to say something, but she went deathly quiet. What is it? Nah, forget it. But Serena wasn't the type to let other things go unsaid. She was the curious type who always wanted answers, always dug until she got them. It got into her quite a bit of trouble as a child, more than she'd care to admit. Please tell me. I promise we'll make fun. Serena gave her those innocent eyes, and Leila let out a sigh in defeat. She placed the same felt bookmark in her book as the day before and closed it shut. She set it aside, getting the feeling that this conversation was going to take up more time than she thought, and she wouldn't be able to read for at least a little while. I was just thinking, what if we went on adventures together? At the suggestion, Serena found her eyes light up just as Leila's had. What was it like to go on an adventure with someone else? Neither of the two, from what they had said, had ever known. That sounds amazing! Her face beamed like a ray of sunlight, her mind already whirling through possibilities. There's so many places I've always wanted to go, but Mom and Papa could never leave work or leave my brothers behind to go. And I've had every opportunity to go places, but going someplace alone just feels like it defeats the purpose, doesn't it? I know what you mean. It's lonely. They both brooded on the thought for a brief moment, but Serena didn't want her to let that spoil the moment. Like I said, get ready for some of my bad reading. For any opportunities this possibly could potentially bring them. So where do you want to go first? Wait a minute. You're just going to go? Just like that? Serena laughed, nodding. She dismissed the other's concern with a wave of her hand. I know we don't know each other all that well, but this is a good chance to start. Besides, you've had plenty of chances to murder me and you didn't. Though you did almost eat me when we first met. I told you that was a joke. That's a rather trusting analysis, though. That definitely might get you in trouble one of these days. Tell you what, if I ever feel like you're doing anything suspicious, or I don't trust you, then I will run and turn you in myself. I'm quite a fast runner if I do say so myself. I'm also pretty fast, you know. Think you can outrun me? Let's hope we never have to find out. They both laughed at that, the mood going from dark to light. They began to use the rest of their time that day planning what they would do with their next evening of free time, where they would explore. By the end of the day, Serena had finally made plans with a potential friend, tomorrow evening after class, in fact. She had managed to study quite a bit of her dull textbooks, and she even wrote down a potential opening paragraph for her novel. Things were beginning to look up. Cool. I wonder how long this thing is. Like, obviously, I'm going to keep going at it until it's over. Because I assume it goes through, like, how they get to get really close to each other and all that, but, you know, it might become a series. Serena sat at her desk, cupping her cheek with one hand, and the other hand aimlessly marking her notebook with childlike doodles. Butterflies, some birds, grass, a sun, a tree. She was tapping her foot as she always did when she was impatient. Her eyes drifted to her watch on her drawing wrist every 5 minutes, hoping it would magically manage to speed up. Serena, do you have something you'd like to show the class? At the sound of her name, Serena's eyes jolted to the front. Her body went stiff and she began to shake nervously. Pardon? Those doodles you're working on while you completely ignore my lecture. Surely you'd like to show them to the entire class? Serena blushed, gripping her notebook tightly and holding it against her chest to hide it from view. She would be embarrassed even if her family saw these drawings. Though she knew her mother was the type to hang even her worst artworks on the fridges as if they belonged in a museum. No, sir. Well, then I'd ask you pay attention and take notes instead of drawing. And a bit of advice, if you plan on ignoring the lecture to draw, then make attempts to look toward the front periodically. And not check your watch every 5 minutes. Makes you much less suspicious. Nice. The teacher's like, look, if you want to do whatever you're doing, that's fine. Just don't look so obvious about it. Man, I wish teachers I had were that cool. Yes, sir. Serena did her best to hide herself by sinking as far as she could into the seat. But she could feel everyone's eyes on her. She could hear the snickers, whispers. She wished she was 100 miles away, rather than being the center of attention. The girls in the back of the class, the same girls who always chattered amongst themselves, but never got in trouble for it, began to gossip as they always did. And the teacher continued on with the lecture as if nothing at all was happening. Serena was beginning to be convinced that these girls were the devils her mother always warned her about. Devils that somehow always seemed to get whatever they wanted, while the angels got punished. But she hoped the stories of karma about how those devils always got punished in the end would ring true eventually. What, does she have a date or something? That's gotta be one special guy for her to be so flustered. Even though she just got called out in class, she might actually be luckier than us. Hey, I can totally get a date. Yeah, right, the last guy you asked out ran away in terror. Yeah, suck it. Hey, that's not true, he was late. Sure. You two are hopeless. Speak for yourself. Maybe we can take some pointers from her. If she'll even talk to us. Yeah, true, she never talks to anyone. How did she even manage to score a date anyway? All of a sudden, being the subject of all the ridicule and attention, something inside Serena snapped. It had been a long time since she had been this anxious, this panicked. But she couldn't take being stared at like she was an alien. Laughed at, talked about right behind her back. It's not a date. She stood from her desk, still hugging her notebook to her chest. Suddenly the room got deathly quiet. The teacher stopped lecturing in mid-sentence. The class stopped scribbling down notes, and even the girls behind her had stopped gossiping. Everyone's eyes were on her again. In her rage, she had completely forgotten herself. That she was in the middle of class, surrounded by about 30 other students just like her, all of which were now just simply staring at her in confusion and shock. Her heart pounding in her chest, her breath hitching in her throat. I'm sorry. Without being able to be the center of attention any longer, Serena quickly grabbed her things and bolted out the classroom door. She didn't dare look back to see everyone's looks of disappointment. A tear ran down her cheek, and when she thought about how disappointed her parents would be, how much hang on. How much punishment she would get from the teachers for this. Would she get kicked out of class? Fail? She ran, not wanting to think about it anymore. Damn. She ran to the meeting place, a small convenience store around the corner from Labyrinth everyone in this area knew well, and visited frequently, knowing full well she was nearly an hour early. But she didn't want to be anywhere else, see anyone else. She wanted to be with the one person she knew would make fun. The one person who wouldn't judge. The person who, as she opened her eyes wide, was right in front of her now. Serena? I didn't expect you here for at least another 30 minutes. Are you okay? She never was good at hiding her tears, or hiding anything, really. Her mother always said she wore her emotions on her sleeve, and one look at her face was enough to know everything she was feeling. Serena frantically reached up her sleeve and began to attempt to wipe them away. What was left over, she was sure was red splotched wet mess. But it wasn't as if she could fake it now. Sorry, I thought I'd have some time to calm down, but... Yeah, I showed up early. Sorry, I just had a strong urge to see you, and... The bunny girl's heart skipped a beat. Leila wanted to see her as much as she wanted to see Leila. So much so that she showed up early to wait in hopes of even getting to spend an extra few minutes of time with her. Her cheeks flushed, though. She doubted Leila would notice over the red remains over her tears. It's probably weird, right? Or stalkerish, even. We barely know each other, after all. God, I must sound completely stupid. No, I think it's nice. I wanted to see you, too. Yep. Despite the fact that she was just crying barely 5 minutes ago, Serena found herself smiling softly at the other. Thinking that someone else wanted to see her. Was waiting for her. It was a feeling Serena couldn't describe. But she knew at least it made her happy. Good. But if you don't want to go out now, I totally understand. We can go somewhere else and talk. No. Serena blurted out a bit stronger than she intended. She was so used to being coddled, to not be taken seriously, she wanted to make her intentions clear. She didn't want there to be any misunderstandings. I want to go, with you, and I don't want any of my negative feelings getting in the way of whatever fun we have. So let's go. On one condition. Name it. Leila narrowed her eyes and began to study the other's face, as if she was searching for expressions to cue her in a particular detail Serena was unaware of. Serena shook a bit self-consciously. That you don't run away from your feelings. You don't have to tell me what happened, or even what you're feeling now, but I will not let this adventure be an excuse for you to run from your problems. Okay? I promise, I won't run. At least not anymore today. The fox smiled, gesturing a hand toward the streets across from her. Well then, princess, off we go to our first adventure. Right. Serena giggled and they began to walk. Side by side down the afternoon suburban streets. wondering just what sorts of things they would see when they reached their destination. Neat. Hurry up or I missed the penguin show. Penguins? They have penguins in Everton? Leila laughed, grabbing the other by the hand and rushing her inside. Just moments ago, they had eagerly handed the attendant some cash, which Leila generously offered, and the attendant bowed his head in thanks as they practically ran inside. Serena really didn't have much time to look as Leila rushed her along, but she held on for dear life in hopes that Leila wasn't joking, that there was going to be real life actual penguins here. Penguins are pretty dope. Fellow birds. One she had only seen in animal books or browsed on Google Images. She smiled brightly as she turned her head from side to side, watching in wonder as water and rainbow creatures flowed all around her, just one glass pane away. Thank God! They're just about to start now. And suddenly they were stopped. By the time they got there, the indoor benches outside the penguin habitat were already filled with people. Mostly parents and children who were laughing and playing a bit too loud and showing each other keychains and plushies that parents had bought for them at the gift shop. Super. Leila frowned, looking a bit disappointed at not being able to get a front row seat. We can just watch back here. It's quieter and I can still see just fine. She assured Leila, who shrugged in response. The frown drifted from the fox girl's face, and the look of sheer excitement replaced it as she watched a female aquarist. Aquarist? Is that the word? Step out into the land portion of the habitat on the other side of the glass. The aquarist spoke in the microphone wrapped around her ear, and the show began. And it was only then that Leila realized she had still had Serena's hand within her own, when she attempted to lean backwards against a concrete pillar to rest her back on and felt Serena's arm tug against a small force. Sorry, I guess I grabbed it without your permission. The fox girl released the other's hand quickly, holding her hands up in the air as if to prove her innocence. Leila's cheeks were red, but she tried to drift her attention to the penguin show so as not to draw attention to them. Serena found that her own cheeks heated up a bit when she realized she had held the other's hand, even if it was just a few moments. She'd never even been that close to her friend before, and it made her feel warm and wanted. It's okay, I'll let you know if you do anything I don't like. Promise? Leila gave the other a grin, but deep in her eyes was a look of sincerity that proved the bunny girl that she was being deadly serious. Serena gave the other a smile, nodding her head. I promise. And so for the next hour or so, they watched the lady feed equatorial penguins raw fish and give out random facts about them that Leila thought were surprisingly informative. Serena watched in amazement as the penguins effortlessly glided through the water and waddled along the shore, to which she giggled like a child over a puppy. When the show was over, Leila had to pull Serena out of her penguin-struck trance. She dragged her by the arm for a few moments before they retracted their steps to the entrance and began to actually explore the aquarium as intended, one tank at a time. I hope we get to see some sea turtles. That's what you want to see? Not jellyfish or clownfish? Or, well, any kind of fish? Serena giggled as she walked beside the other, peeking her head over a tank of a few stingrays. She debated for a moment whether she was going to roll up her sleeves and pet one, but she inched backwards just when it looked like she was going to commit. Those are all great too, but I guess I always just felt connected to turtles, hiding in their shells and all that. I like to be on my own too, to swim freely in my own thoughts. Leila rolled up her sleeve without a second thought, gliding her hand over the top of a stingray. Serena opened her eyes wide at the other, surprised she could commit to petting one so easily. Surely sometimes coming out of your shell, feeling the touch of something new, isn't so bad once in a while though, right? At that, Serena glided as close as she could to Leila. She held out her arm and stuck her shaky fingers under the water. She reached her hand down closer and closer to the stingray, who seemed to be attached to Leila's touch. She done a bit as soon as her fingertips danced over the stingray's back, beginning to retreat her hand out of the water. But Leila gently grabbed her wrist and moved her hand back into place under the water's surface. The stingray danced along the edges of her fingers down her palm and swam off towards a small group of children on the other side of the tank. See, wasn't so bad, right? Serena pulled her hand out of the tank, which was now dripping, but she stared at her hand for a moment as if the touch of the stingray was still stitched onto her skin. I'm getting Doki Doki flashbacks where I just can't read right. I hope you guys are understanding half of what I'm saying here. If not, leave a comment described to help me read better. Then she smiled, first at herself and then up at Leila, who was patiently awaiting her response. It was a little slimy, but not bad at all. There's 10 more to see, if you're brave enough, of course. I think I can, if you're with me. What she said was so sincere and innocent, Leila couldn't help but blush a bit. She chuckled to herself a bit as she reached the hand washing station, nodding Serena over and gesturing to her for her to clean her hands thoroughly. When Serena finished drying her hands, Leila had already plotted their next destination and began to lead the other there. The grand finale! Amazing! The glass must be super strong to be able to hold all this water and all these reefs, all these... For a brief moment, Serena's face went blank, like she was looking at something she couldn't believe. But then her mouth twitched into a bright smile, and she jumped up and down like a child, pointing just over her head. Leila followed her fingertip, seeing above them in the tunnel of see-through glass where they were currently walking through. A sea turtle nearly the size of their own selves drifted by. A few sharks and other marine life also fluttered above the canopy of the sea above their heads, but Serena's attention never drifted from the turtle's dark wood shell as it drifted gracefully about the aquarium sea. You really do like turtles, don't you? I like turtles. And remember that? He's so pretty. Like a prince of the ocean. What if it's a she? Then princess of the sea. What if it's older? Then a queen. The fox girl began to laugh, which Serena echoed. Laughing, they both know now, really was contagious. At least when the two of them were involved. Why do these sea turtles have to be royal? What is the medieval fantasy novel? Serena's face went blank again, but this time it wasn't in surprise or amazement. It was the face she made when she suddenly got an idea. She quickly reached into her bag she had wrapped up around her shoulder and began to dig through it, to which Leila tilted her head in confusion. What are you doing? But Serena knew if she talked now, she'd forget all about her idea. So she focused first on fetching her writing notebook and pen out of her bag and pulling it out. She jotted down all the words she was thinking, which surprisingly she found to be enough to fill a page. When she felt she got her idea down as adequately as she possibly could, she looked up at Leila and gave her biggest grin Leila had ever seen. You just gave me my inspiration for my book. Really? Sea turtles with titles? That's what you were waiting about? Maybe. You don't know what it's about, really. You won't know until you read it. I see. Trying to convince me to be your first buyer. Very clever tactic. Serena just grinned, to which Leila responded with a grin of her own. Serena stuffed her notebook and pen back in her bag, and she stepped into place beside the other. The pair finished the rest of the tour with grins on their faces, their hearts so much lighter than they had been in a long time. Possibly their whole lives. So, I guess this is where we part ways for now. Yeah. Serena stared at Leila for a moment, then cast her eyes down to the sidewalk just outside the convenience store where they met a few hours previously. They were standing about a step apart, just far enough to where she could reach out and touch the other, but Serena found that she was shaking far too much for that. She locked her hands behind her back, shifting her weight from one leg to the other nervously. Are you okay? Yeah, of course. I just, well... With a tilt of her chin, Leila tried to find and meet Serena's gaze again, but the other was shifting so much she couldn't quite find it. She wondered if all her future conversations with Serena were going to be like this, not that she minded the other being shy. So Leila sighed and gave the other the sweetest smile and voice she could muster. Whatever it is, I won't be mad, okay? And I can never hate you, or think any less of you. So tell me? Something about the other, her confidence, her bravery, her faith in someone she often hated herself, made Serena want to open herself up. More and more with each moment she spent with Leila. But Serena's personality of always holding herself back and fear that someone will hate her still made her have second thoughts. Perhaps the more time she spent with the fox girl, the easier it would become to open up. Or perhaps it would be just as difficult, but she would be able to manage it if it was her. I bought you something at the shop. The bunny girl pulled her linked hands out from behind her back and held a small paper bag designed with aquafish and bubbles on it that fit perfectly into the center of her palm. Leila's eyes went wide as she cautiously held out a hand to take it. For me? Well, for both of us, actually. I just really wanted to thank you for the book idea, and for this trip, too. I had a lot of fun, and Serena buried her head again, unable to face the other with a flood of blushes forming all over her face. She felt Layla's fingers tickle her palm as the other cautiously picked it up. She heard the crunch of the paper as Layla peeled back the tape, and the cling in the middle as two pieces fell into her palm. After a few moments of silence, Serena found she couldn't take it. She looked up, over the presents now resting in Layla's palm, two metal turtle hair clips, one bronze, one silver. They're the hair clips, see? Bronze for you and silver for me. And we can wear them together. I just figured you might get mad at me if I bought something for you, and not for myself, because I don't have a lot of money. So I bought a matching gift and... Serena. When the other looked up at Layla's face again, she found that tears had begun to fall from them. For a moment, Serena's body went numb, terrified she had done something wrong. She wanted to reach out to explain to the other what she had meant, but before she could say anything, Layla cut off all her pleas by wrapping her free arm around Serena's shoulder and burying her face in the crook of the bunny girl's neck. Wow. Serena could feel Layla warm tears on her skin, her warm breath, warm... I think that's meant to be warm. Her soft lips as she began to speak against her pale skin. Thank you, Serena. You're welcome. Never having had a friend before, Serena didn't quite know what to do. She stood there awkwardly for a few moments, but then she gently raised a hand and placed it softly on Layla's back. If this is what the other wanted, the other needed, then Serena was happy to oblige. After all, the bunny had meant to give the fox the gift for the precise reason of thanking her for this trip. A hug was just an extra bonus? A tip? Though Serena could never quite see a physical exchange like this as just a business transaction. In fact, she didn't quite know what to call this at all. Sorry, I know this really isn't your thing. Layla pulled back after a few moments, wiping away any traces of tears with her sleeve. She used one hand to hold the bronze turtle clip, held out the silver one to Serena. She was smiling brightly, and Serena wondered if perhaps those tears were actually happy ones. At least she hoped they were. Shall we try them on then? Serena nodded with eagerness, glad that the other was no longer crying and seemed her bright and proud self. Yeah. Serena took the small clip out of the other's hands, and the two girls pulled up their bangs slightly, just enough a hair to clasp the pin to where it would rest in place comfortably. I wonder if we get to see the clips. Like, they have animated characters for a visual novel. You'd think that we would see the clips. Then they turned back towards each other and giggled. Kind of weird, isn't it? Wearing an animal when you're part animal yourself. You're most definitely not turtle material. It's not weird. It's cute. It is? I say so. At this, Layla reached out a hand and swept a stray hair from Serena's face. And it's even prettier on you. Serena felt her cheeks go instantly hot, as if someone had set a fire to them. This wasn't the kind of heat from embarrassment at being the center of attention in class. This wasn't the kind of heat from fumbling about trying to find the words to say to a stranger. This was a different kind of heat. A warmth she had never felt before. A warmth that made her heart skip a beat. Well, it's about time for you to get home, isn't it? You got that novel of yours to work on. After all, not to mention classes tomorrow, right? Yeah, you're right. When Layla pulled her hand back, Serena felt the warmth slowly leave her body. She felt a shiver run down her spine. She felt like someone had given her a blanket, only to pull it off her shoulders moments later. She was relieved the other didn't make her come up with an answer she didn't have, but Serena also felt a little empty. Why was that? What about whatever was bothering you earlier? No running, right? Serena nodded, putting on a brave face. No running, not ever. Good. Well then, message me, alright? We'll make our next plans then. Serena was about to ask how when the fox girl pulled out a small strip of paper folded in half and placed it into Serena's palm at her side. The bunny girl flinched for a moment, but she closed her hand into a fist and held the paper there protectively. If Layla wanted her to have it, then she should hold on to it for dear life. Night then, Serena. Night. Serena lifted her clenched palm and under the streetlight looked over the digits written neatly in the center of the slip of paper. Serena smiled, wondering how long Layla was waiting for the right moment just to hand her this, to give her this opportunity to open communication with her. Serena placed the slip of paper protectively into a pouch inside her bag and began to walk back to her dorm, the streetlights guiding her path. As soon as Serena got home, she immediately pulled the slip of paper out of her bag and unlocked her phone. With excited tap, she entered Layla's number into her records as a new contact. One of four that she currently owns, the other three belong to being her mother, her father, and school student resource office. Wow. I'm not gonna lie, for what phones are nowadays, like having only 4 numbers like that, this seems like so few. Let's see. That was all that she had ever needed to get by, but just looking at this 4th contact made her smile more than any of the others she has ever entered. Felix, I think I finally made a friend. A real friend. I think you're a little beyond friendship at this point. I hate to say it. Like, this is a fast, if anyone knows what I'm talking about here, like, this is escalating fast. Of course, it had only been a few days since she had met the other, and there was no way Serena could possibly know if this friendship was going to last. The other might get fed up with her one day, and the other might move away, and they might never see each other again. Life has a way of surprising you, constantly keeping you on your toes. Serena's mother always said, anyway. But she always added afterward, not all the surprises are bad. Meeting Leila, Serena thought, was a good surprise. It was completely unexpected, and a little scary, but Serena liked spending time with the other. She liked sharing her interests, a lot of which they both had in common. She liked not being judged for being who she was, and she liked that the other encouraged her, not just in her dream of being a writer, but also to be brave and to not run away or hide from her problems. Leila supported her, but also pushed her to be her best self, and that was a rare trait in a person. That's like the best kind of person you can meet. whether it's just as friends or whatever, that's the best kind of person you can meet. Oh, I guess I should call Mom and tell her about the good news, huh? Looking at Leila's contact number made her all giddy. For the first time, she could call or text someone just for the sake of it. To just say hi or talk about silly things. She didn't have to call and ask questions. She didn't have to call when she only had news or to prove that she was absolutely totally fine. She could call or message for any reason, and that was a warm relief to her. Hello? Serena, can you hear me? Oh, sorry, Mom, I guess I spaced out for a minute. Serena hadn't even realized she had pressed her mom's number until the line had already connected and her mother's voice echoed over the phone. Serena cradled the phone against her ear, thankful to hear the comforting sound of her mother's laughter on the other end. At least you haven't changed that much, my dear. Always my little astronaut. I guess you're right. Serena was always a little klutzy, her attention span usually stuck in some thought about a book or story growing up, so her mother began to call her an astronaut. Head always in the stars, she said, always dreaming. The nickname stuck around even now. So what did you want to tell me, sweetheart? Well, I think I've made a friend. Her mother let a surprised, excited gasp, and Serena was reminded yet again of where she got her nature of being giddy about things she found cute or interesting from. Her intuitive side she knew she got from her father, who was not a man of many words, but as kind and thoughtful as a man as one would ever meet. That's great, honey. You haven't had a good friend in ages. You've been due. Not since her 8th grade year in middle school, Serena recalled. A girl in her science class who she bonded over talking about animals with. Unfortunately, the girl transferred out halfway through the year to Serena's devastation. She would talk to people sometimes after that, but would never more than acquaintances. She hadn't had anyone she could truly call a friend since then. Until now. Her name's Leila. I met her in the library. She's a book nerd like me. You read books and went to the aquarium and talked about all sorts of things. And I just got her number. The raised Serena squealed happily into the phone and made her mom echo the sound right back. And it made Serena even giddier to see she wasn't the only one excited about this. That's great, honey. And are you going to meet with her again soon? I haven't made plans yet, but I'm going to message her after this. I just wanted to tell you first. First news I've had since I've come here. So you don't have to rush things. You've only been there a month. I'd say you're progressing well. Thanks, Mom. I'm really going to try my best. I know you will. You always do. This is touching, by the way. Serena smiled into the phone, so happy her mother was always there if she needed. That her mother would always support her. It was something she hoped everyone could have. Well, I'm going to get off here. I'll let you go, Mom. Okay, dear. Good luck with your new friend and classes. You're doing great. Thanks, Mom. Oh, and sweetie? Yeah? Thanks for telling me about your friend. You're welcome. Bye. Bye. Not gonna lie, that was a very touching moment. Like, I feel warm and fuzzy inside, not just because I'm wearing a sweater. As soon as the call ended, Serena's fingers drifted over to Leila's number. Her talk with her mother had given her the motivation to go through with it, but was she supposed to message or call? Did Leila even respond right now, or was she the type to wait and reply later? She'd never had someone who texted actively before, except a few online friends she had made that weren't really as active anymore. Stop thinking about it, Serena. Just do it. Wait, what's that? What's that, Shia LaBeouf? Just do it. Alright, let's see. She tapped on the message box and took a deep breath before beginning to type what she was feeling. She read a couple times, edited, erased some words, some lines, before finally setting on, "Hey, it's Serena. Thank you again for the trip to the aquarium. I had a lot of fun. I'd love to go with you somewhere else soon." She hit send as quickly as she could so she wouldn't chicken out. I hope she responds. Serena kept her phone on vibrate and began to do her nightly routine as she waited. Showering, changes into her pajamas, brushing her teeth, and finally sitting on her bed and turning on her alarm so that she wouldn't be late for her morning class tomorrow. As soon as she clicked the alarm button on, her phone buzzed in her hands. Ah! The vibration was so sudden she nearly dropped her phone into the floor. But she managed to catch it and hold it firmly with her shaking hand. She let a sigh of relief before checking her phone. It was a reply from Leila, which made Serena's heart jolt as if she read it. "This is Leila, so good job on reading my terrible handwriting, lol. No problem, I had a lot of fun too. Another trip is definitely in order. But maybe we should space them out a bit, that way you have time to write and study and everything. Maybe like next week?" Next week. Serena did feel that was best, though she longed to go on another adventure as soon as possible. She needed time to relax, study, and time to begin working on her novel idea she just wrote down the concept idea of. If she waited till next week, then she could tell Layla about what progress she was making. "Yeah, next week is fine. I can meet you after class again." "So do you still want to meet in the library on my off days?" "Of course. I spend most of my time in the forgotten section of the library after all, and you're welcome down there as often as you like. Though you should definitely make sure it won't distract you too much." "It won't be a distraction." "I'll make sure to stay on task, rest at home, and when I need it, it'll help too. Being around the books and reading with my novel, I mean. As long as you're okay with it, that's good enough for me." "So what is the plan for our next adventure?" "I have the perfect idea. Let's meet at the park around 8 p.m. Serena tilted her head curiously. "Why 8 p.m.? Doesn't it get dark then?" "That, dear Serena, is the mystery. Some lights you see can only be found in the dark." "Nifty." What is she planning? In the rabbit's mind, Layla was grinning mischievously, and Serena was caught in her spell. She had to know what the fox girl was up to. "I don't get it, but I'll be there, and no funny business." "I wouldn't dream of it, princess." Serena rolled her eyes, but she was smiling all the while. Layla somehow always managed to make her smile, whether she was trying or not. With a content nod, Serena set her phone at her bedside table, turned off her lamp, and curled up under the blankets. She pulled her fox plush up against her chest, her heart beating unsteadily as she looked into its eyes. Fox eyes, which soon became her eyes, Layla's eyes, in Serena's mind. So the little red fox plush she had seems to be replacing Layla there. They did hurt laying Layla's head against her chest like this. There's no way she could imagine it. It was odd, she thought. Ironic, even. How her only companion through high school up until now was a fox plush. And her first friend after all these years is also a fox. Fate worked in mysterious ways, she thought. Let's hope tomorrow is a little less of a roller coaster, Felix. As she closed her eyes, her thoughts drifted into sleep. Her body felt the exhaustion of the day's ups and downs, class incident, the aquarium adventure, from one low to one high. She just hoped that now that she was on top of the high, she wouldn't crash to an all-time low again. Okay, so, we're gonna go ahead and call that one it for tonight. I'm just gonna save right here. I kind of don't want to do this in like one big chunk, but we'll do this in nice little sections like this. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. If you haven't subscribed already, I'd be grateful for it. You know, use them beaks, peck them buttons. If you like the video, leave a like, comment if you have anything to say about my inability to read, or anything like that. Man, I gotta say, this is a pretty touching story already. You know, if you could see it. Yeah, and then until next time, have a good one.